jembor sordar nyumi jang zoner monum jembor ngabgyarda bakır darngam sando shirmer dor tomba tuje janla ki shom sar ne jeror tseng jangam san jahur tuje shanla yelarman jime panzo jala soran de gon gestoban por shingir lo.
The profound Dharma is rarely encountered in eons. Now we hear and follow it. May we realize the Tathagata's meaning to liberate sentient beings. Please generate the Supreme Bodhicitta before we start. Today, we will dedicate a meaningful and focused hour and a half this afternoon together to provide an oral transmission and detailed explanation to everyone, the poison-destroying Peacock mind training. First, I will very briefly for a moment talk about the esteemed author of this teaching. Let me give a simple introductory overview about the author here. After that, I will provide a literal explanation of the verses and then briefly elaborate on them. Because this teaching, I think it can be said, has been mentioned by many great masters within different schools of Tibetan Buddhism. But regardless of which school it is, this teaching has not been widely transmitted, nor has it spread extensively. Moreover, among all the eminent monks and great masters, unfortunately, there exist almost no detailed commentaries on this important teaching. At least up to now, I have not personally come across any. So it should be said that this teaching is extremely rare and precious. Many great masters have mentioned it, but this teaching truly has not been widely transmitted and spread. In the West, it has been taught in English around the 1980s and 1990s. There are different versions of Chinese translations circulating in other regions as well. This time, taking advantage of the retreat period at the Institute, I want to give around 3 classes each week total to you. It can be considered a kind of guidance to explain it to everyone. I have received the transmission. So at the same time, during the classes, I will give the oral transmission to you as well. In fact, this teaching is actually something everyone should know about. I remembered it was around 2012 when I taught the wheel weapon mind training. That was more than 10 years ago, when I also mentioned the author Dharma. He has 2 very famous works indeed. One is Wheel Weapon Mind Training, and the other is the Poison Destroying Peacock Mind Training. These 2 works are extraordinarily precious because they are written by the guru of the Venerable Atisha. From what we have seen thus far, this master has these 2 significant works. No other works have been found. In the great treatise on the stages of the path to enlightenment, Venerable Fazen translated Dharma as Fa Kai. In some other sources or texts, his name is also translated as Fahu. There are also many translators named Fahu, and there are other eminent monks and masters with similar names. This author should be, roughly speaking, someone from over 1,000 years ago. The exact years of his life are not detailed, but we may derive certain inferences. As we know, the Venerable Atisha was a remarkable and influential master who lived from 982 to 1054 CE. As for Atisha, well, when he was still young, he actually studied directly under the Venerable Dharma and listened to the Mahavibhasha Shastra for 12 years. There was such a history. Later, the Venerable Atisha went to study under the Master Selingpa, who was from Suvarnadvipa, Indonesia. When Atisha was there, he received Master Selingpa's approval. At that time, he was required to practice for 12 years before he could return. Later, the Venerable Atisha agreed to this. There was only a cloth curtain separating the master and disciple. Nothing else separated them. He had been practicing for 12 years, and finally, he truly gave rise to an authentic bodhicitta From the biography of him, it can also be clearly seen that Atisha had more than 150 teachers. Among them, there were 13 who were true accomplished masters. In this case, we can say Master Selingpa should be the most important one. When other teachers passed away, he didn't hold nirvana ceremonies. But after Master Selingpa passed into nirvana, he continuously performed nirvana ceremonies, memorial rituals, offerings, and many other virtuous practices. It is clear that after Venerable Atisha had followed Master Selingpa for 12 years and then returned to India, he continued to receive teachings from Dharma Rakshita, including the poison-destroying Peacock. Later, when he was about to leave India and come to Tibet, his guru especially asked him to take these two teachings, the wheel weapon mind training and the poison-destroying Peacock, to the Tibetan area to help free uncivilized people. At that time, it seems that in the eyes of Indians, or in the view of these great monks and masters, Tibetan people were seen as a group of beings who were particularly unruly, wild, barbaric, incapable, and unrefined. Later, when Venerable Atisha arrived in Tibetan area, these two teachings gradually began to spread as well. We should all be aware that at that time, one could say, among the majority of practitioners in Tibet, Venerable Atisha contributed a lot to establish a genuine stages of the path. Atisha composed Lamp of the Path to Enlightenment. And later, Master Tsongkhapa also composed the stages of the path to enlightenment and the stages of the path of Tantra. Of course, some of us believe Atisha is the true founder of the stages of path in Tibetan Buddhism. I think this reasoning may not necessarily be valid because before this, it was around the 8th century that Guru Padmasambhava expounded the garland of Vajratantra. In this Shastra, a very complete treatise on the stages of the path is presented later in the terma that Nyingma Oza revealed, which, as you may know, is a teaching that also originates from Guru Padmasambhava, Heart Instructions for Practice. There is also a complete stages of the path. It explains from rare human birth to great perfection, with a complete stages of the path, including common and uncommon preliminaries. So if Atisha is considered to be the founder of the stages of the path in Tibetan Buddhism, that might not be entirely accurate, actually. Of course, the stages of the path that he established also played a significant role within different traditions of Tibetan Buddhism, especially Kadampa tradition. This is something that everyone can see. So we all surely know as well that since Venerable Atisha was such a great master, the treatises composed by his teacher must certainly be extraordinary, because many of our previous masters have also said this. For the treatises composed by someone with true bodhicitta in their mind stream, no matter how later generations study, encounter, or recall them, in fact, through the blessings of these great masters, we can generate genuine bodhicitta within our own mind streams. For a long time, I myself have strong aspiration for these teachings. Atisha's Lamp of the Path to Enlightenment, which must be remarkable as discussed before. Guru Padmasambhava's teachings, including his Heart Advice on Practice, as well as other essential teachings, which are also especially remarkable. I do have strong aspiration for these, and the two Dharma teachings of Dharma Rakshita must be extraordinary. We all know this very well indeed, that Atisha's guru must be remarkable. Many people say that although they have never met Khenpo Tubga, they know the guru of Jigme Phuntsok Rinpoche must certainly be an extraordinary being. Another example is even though we have never met Guru Kumaradza, as the guru of the omniscient Longchenpa, he must also be remarkable. So from the view, practice and conduct of a great disciple, we can see that his root lineage guru indeed must certainly be extraordinary. Therefore, the treatise we are studying today is also from such a master. It should be said that in our present 21st century, regarding this great master and his accomplishments, not to mention non-Buddhists, but even among Buddhists, not everyone knows about him. But in fact, if we truly engage in practicing his wisdom in daily life, then everyone should be able to gain more or less some benefits. So I hope that you will earnestly learn this teaching. Actually, there shouldn't be too many classes. At most, I can't say for sure right now. I thought of doing 10 verses daily. Then, since there are over 80 verses, it would take about 8 classes to finish. But later, I realized that some teachings might need a bit more explanation, so it might not go that quickly necessarily. But anyway, there's no need for us to be especially anxious. If you've listened to the first class, or if you watch the first class, I hope you'll persevere with the teachings that follow. Many people among Buddhists are sometimes upside down. They are particularly enthusiastic about empowerments and mantra recitations. And whenever there's news about such events, it spreads widely. Yet when it comes to the mind training or systematic practices that would help their mind stream, it seems like no one pays any attention or cares at all, especially compared with such long-term daily teachings. Everyone feels a new teaching given occasionally is more sublime. Such daily teaching, long-term, appears to be completely irrelevant to them. Many people have this kind of upside-down attitude. But in fact, the teachings that truly benefit our minds are the daily teachings. If you receive an empowerment but don't actually practice, it's not very meaningful either. Reciting is likewise. If your mind hasn't been tamed, no matter how many millions you recite, apart from planting virtuous seeds in your own mind stream, I don't know other benefits. Everyone should be clear about this. So with the treatise we're studying today, everyone should have a sense of joy and respect, which I often mention. Moreover, a mind that treasures the Dharma is also needed. Now, in this degenerate age, all kinds of things in the world are extremely complicated and constantly changing. So at a time like this, even just listening to a single class is not that easy. Every time I myself listen through recordings to other senior masters classes, I also have the sense of preciousness. When giving a class to others, I think we should also have this sense of how precious it is. So with that in mind, regarding the treatise we are discussing today, as I mentioned earlier, everyone is actually quite familiar with this author, Dharmaraksita. I also talked about this when I was teaching the words of my perfect teacher. What is Dhammarajda like? He himself was a Hinayana master of the Vaibhashika school, but in his mind stream, he was endowed with deep kindness and compassion. Once his neighbor fell seriously ill, and the doctor said that for this illness, he must eat human flesh. Otherwise, there was no way to treat it. Later, this master felt immense compassion for him and then cut flesh from his own thigh to give to the sick person. Afterwards, the patient began to recover soon. It seems that in a dream, a man in white appeared and blessed him, feeding him nectar. When he woke up, he could recite the words and phrases of the 6 treatises of the Middle Way both ways. He thoroughly understood all their meanings without any obstacles. And from then on, he also developed great faith in the Mahayana teachings. You could say he became enlightened from this experience. There are indeed such stories in history. So I think for all of us, if we look at it from the perspective of the author, perhaps he is truly remarkable. even though it was so many years ago at least. This is a work from over 1,000 years ago. Its content is still, even to this very day, incredibly vibrant, lively, and full of energy, truly standing the test of time. Every sentence, whether at that time or as we study it today, there's quite a lot of feeling inside, truly. We can definitely gain tremendous benefit from it. So as for this treatise, I will also briefly, if no interruptions, I would like to first provide a brief outline and then discuss it in this particular way. The poison-destroying peacock mind training is divided into the initial meaning, the main meaning, and the final meaning. It's structured in 3 parts. There is no further subdivision for the initial meaning at the beginning. In the Tibetan version, it is simply called the poison-destroying peacock mind training. In some other languages, the word treasure is included in the title. Using treasure isn't needed. It is called the poison-destroying peacock mind training. What does this mean? Everyone should be clear about this. As discussed earlier, this practice method, the foundation of everything is to train our own mind. If you come to understand your own mind, Padmasambhava also mentioned, as is well known at the beginning of his teachings, in fact, what we call the mind, you can use your mind to observe your own mind. It has no origin. It has no place to stay nor destination. Ultimately, this mind is empty and lacks inherent nature, yet it is clear. In fact, this is our very own mind. If we analyze it even more deeply, it possesses the 3 bodies, as well as countless boundless virtues. Therefore, if we truly and earnestly cultivate our own mind, what is hidden in my heart? Actually, infinite merits can be displayed. All of these faults are only temporary and can be completely and entirely destroyed. So what is the analogy here? It is the peacock destroying poison. What means peacocks destroy poison? Actually, peacocks are innately and naturally endowed with the ability to destroy poison. This is not only mentioned in Buddhism. I have also seen it recorded in the Chinese Compendium of Materia Medica. The Compendium of Materia Medica says peacocks can ward off evil. They avoid certain evils, clearing poisons, and even curing 100 diseases. It has these kinds of effects. In addition, in the Tibetan Buddha's 4 medical tantras, it is also specifically mentioned that the peacock is believed to have the direct ability to destroy poison. Whether in folk tradition or in Buddhist scriptures, the peacock is a detoxifying creature. It is a truly magical and mystical bird. It is the divine bird. By relying on it, many poisons can be destroyed. In our world, we are particularly afraid of poison. Everyone is very afraid of it. But if we use the power of the peacock, if we use its ability to counteract poison, then poison is no longer poison. It can be completely destroyed. In the Sakya's Treasury of Good Advices, it is also said, peacock pretty, voice nice, yet what it eats is all poison. This means that although the peacock is very beautiful in appearance and its voice is melodious, what exactly does it eat? It actually eats poison. So what it consumes is poison. For example, in some Indian folk traditions, not only can the peacock counteract poison, but even peacock droppings can be used to treat various poisoning-related illnesses. Nowadays, when it comes to interpreting poison, especially chemical poisons, there may be some different opinions. But regardless, as I just clearly mentioned earlier, whether it's the great masters of the past, in all these documents, the peacock is described as having this ability. How is it said? Wise eliminate faults. However, this is not the case for the foolish. The Garuda can peck at poisonous snakes, but crows cannot do the same. Our Sakya Pandita also said, a person who is embodied with profound wisdom will not be easily tainted by faults in any way. But on the contrary, fool will be tainted. Here it mentions the Garuda Nang Kadang. Are the Garuda and the peacock the same? Perhaps not. But actually, it is important to note that the Garuda can also eat poison, whereas the crow is not like this. There are also different ways to interpret this. Here we are using poison to counteract poison. If you practice the meaning of this treatise, this Dharma, it should be within your mind stream. We are all scared of the greed, anger, ignorance, arrogance, and jealousy that we fear. All of these can be eliminated. In the exoteric tradition, generally speaking, this is quite rare. Although there are concepts like afflictions are themselves bodhi. In the esoteric tradition, teachings include transforming the 5 poisons into the path. So I think this author should be a fusion of exoteric and esoteric Buddhism, skilled in both exoteric and esoteric. Because this treatise, not only are many exoteric principles discussed, but in the later sections, many esoteric practice methods are also explained. Therefore, we also sincerely hope that through studying this treatise in Mindstream, we can truly give rise to bodhicitta. The 5 poisons of greed, anger, and ignorance, they should absolutely not, under any circumstances, cause us any harm, damage, or injury. This is the initial meaning I just explained. Next, the treatise's content should be divided as follows. Although this is not explicit in the original text, I will divide the treatise into 5 sections for the sake of clarity and better organization. The first section is essentially following the life of the Buddha. The second section is transforming the 5 poisons into the path, the use of 5 poisons. The third section, which is titled Actual Practice on the Path. After we finish the explanation of the texts, some of the wording may be adjusted a bit. The fourth section, which is titled Spreading the Authentic Dharma, focuses on this important concept. The fifth section is Destroying Self-Clinging. So as you can see, the entire treatise is divided into 5 sections. Let's talk about the first one. Following the life of the Buddha, which means following the Buddha's biography. It is also divided into prostration, true meaning, and summary meaning, 3 parts included. First is homage. Here it says, for example, the peacocks roaming through the jungle of virulent poison. Walk may be unnecessary. Roam already means walk through the forest of poison. As for the peacock, each section has this. In fact, it might be at the beginning of each section, because in the poison destroying peacock mind training, first there is kind of vivid metaphor. It says that the peacock gracefully and freely strolls in a particularly toxic, intensely poisonous forest. So the meaning here is that the content discussed below is actually that one simply will not be tainted by various afflictions. Such a practitioner can freely and easily move about in the dense, tangled forest of afflictions and can either transform them into the path or directly destroy them. If one can travel in this way, for example, it is certain that that person will not be defiled. Because many other animals are afraid of this dangerous, poisonous forest, but the peacock can leisurely stroll there, taking its time as it moves along. So this actually represents, in a sense, a truly different and unique state of being. There is a line like this in every section. As a matter of fact, the true meaning is pay homage to the supreme Yamantaka. Yamantaka is the one who, according to tradition, destroys Yamatha, Lord of Death, the ultimate end of all things. You can call him either Yamantaka or Yama's enemy. There are also some scriptures and dictionaries in which Yamantaka is mentioned. But in some Gelugpa monasteries, in certain specific cases, Yamantaka and Yama's enemy are considered separate. This time we will also treat them separately. At the beginning of each section, Venerable Dharmaraksita, firstly, homage to the Supreme Yamantaka. I think I mentioned this before back in 2012, probably when I was teaching the wheel weapon mind training. Dharmaraksita was actually a great accomplished master. Moreover, he attained realization as a Yamantaka practitioner, the wrathful Vajra Yamantaka. He was already an enlightened yogi. It seems once upon a time in India, the non-Buddhists were very powerful, and the entire Buddhism was facing some destructive threats. Dharmaraksita carried a tanka with him at that time and let it to subdue them. But firstly, it seemed that the tanka really didn't have any effect. Later, Dharmaraksita manifested a wrathful form and began to clap his hands repeatedly on the face of the tanka. Then the tanka manifested a wrathful appearance. Then miraculous manifestations were displayed. And in the end, all the non-Buddhists on the banks of the Ganges were completely vanquished thoroughly. Buddhism overcame a great calamity and emerged victorious. Afterwards, Dharmaraksita always carefully carried it with him, making sure to keep it close at all times. When Atisha came to Tibet, the tanka was entrusted to him. Venerable Atisha always kept this tanka with him. And later, at the renowned and ancient Refuting monastery located near Lhasa, where Atisha passed into nirvana. If you go down from the current Gongar airport, there is a small monastery next to the Potala Palace called Komolakang, the Tara temple. His Holiness has also visited there before, and we have been there many times as well. It is with blessings. Many of Venerable Atisha's blessed relics are kept there. I've heard that nowadays, because of the highway, the monastery seems rather neglected, located in a poor area. But in fact, this monastery has very powerful blessings. It was also where Atisha died. Later, his stupa and other relics were also kept there. But actually, he stayed in Refuting for a relatively long time. In our Opening the Door to Mind Training, it is mentioned that in the cypress forest of Refuting, he would often recite a verse, practicing as he came and went. So it is said that at that time, Dharmaraksita's Yamantaka's tanka is at Refuting Monastery. Of course, Refuting Monastery in the history of Tibetan Buddhism not only held a certain religious significance, but also had a certain and even significant political status in society. The king of Refuting was quite famous in history. All of these are related to history, which I won't elaborate on here. Overall, we should understand that whether it is Venerable Atisha or Dharmaraksita, their motivation, their true blessings are connected with the sentient beings, especially those of us in the Tibetan area. With this karmic connection to Tibetan Buddhism, the teaching now also has karmic ties with many places in Han regions, and there are causes and conditions there as well. Because from the perspective of Buddhism itself, if sentient beings have faith, it does not distinguish between national borders, ethnicity, or wealth and poverty. There are really no boundaries at all. As long as sentient beings have faith in it and are open to receiving it, every sentient being can benefit from it. It's like the bright full moon in the sky, which never distinguishes whether the vessel of water below is made of gold or silver or clay. It simply doesn't matter. As long as the water in your vessel is clear, reflection of the moon appears instantly, manifesting effortlessly and without any obstruction. So I think that for each of us, as long as we have confidence in ourselves, because as ordinary people, sometimes we have certain ethnic barriers, some barriers of caste, some are cultural barriers, and there are also some barriers between you and me, and so on. For these reasons, perhaps sometimes a lot of blessings are blocked by ourselves because we think, oh, this is their guru, so maybe he doesn't necessarily have blessings for me. Oh, this is indeed a great master from their tradition, and it may have no relations to us. Oh, which country is the Dharma from? So if we think like this, the origin of Buddhism is India, and the relationship between India and China sometimes is good, sometimes not so good. When our relationship isn't good, can't we get the blessing of Buddha? That's impossible. It can't be like that. So as ordinary people, our minds are especially limited. But in terms of the power of Buddhism itself, it is important to note there are no barriers at all. In this way, whether it's Atisha or this author or the lineage masters, we should say that their boundless wisdom and boundless compassion are connected with every sentient being, including us. It's just that if we ourselves block the door of our own faith or gently cover the vessel of our own unique and profoundly deep spiritual capacity gently, then perhaps the blessings or the wondrous causes for realization cannot appear. Other than that, there is no difference at all. So what did we talk about earlier? We discussed his homage verse. Each chapter has such a homage verse. Next, we will discuss the actual meaning. Just now, we have explained the homage verse. Now, let's explain its actual meaning. Specifically in this particular context, it is divided into two aspects. One is following the Buddha's life story, and the other is its rationality or logical soundness, including these two important aspects. Following the Buddha's life story and its rationality divided into two aspects. The first is following Buddha's life story, which is divided into three parts, namely generosity, patience, and not seeking any form of reward. Generosity is divided into four aspects. First, the initial aspect of generosity is giving away one's retinues and possessions.
Yarwa tamchi zhurta yarwa na, vedang vamur yachid shimbar tar, shindam changwa nurdang kur la so, pangba mepra yongsab tangwara sha.
This is how it is explained in simple terms. Because, as everyone knows, this chapter, if we are going to discuss this mind training practice, in fact, actually, first of all, you must fully comprehend and realize, and it is important to recognize that you are, in essence, a Buddhist. If we are Buddhists, when it comes to our learning, who exactly should we follow and why? We should follow in the footsteps of the Buddha. Otherwise, even though we are Buddhists, if we do not follow the Buddha's way of thinking, then we are not truly Buddhists, in fact. What was the Buddha really like? When the Buddha was still at his causal ground, how did he proceed exactly along the way? This is something we should know. Although we cannot, like the Buddha, perfectly accomplish the 6 paramitas in their entirety, at the very least, we should all understand that our Buddha was like this, and the same as our gurus. Therefore, I also do my utmost to follow the Buddha's example in my practice. Everyone should think why he tell many stories about the Buddha in this chapter. In fact, every one of us Buddhists should think about it. This isn't a story from the past. If you think it really has nothing to do with me, it's possible your lineage is not genuine. And you may not be a true Buddhist. If you never even think about the footsteps of the Buddhas who came before, then perhaps you belong to a different faith altogether. It's just like a son who never thinks about what his father's family business is. At the very least, you should at least acknowledge what your father used to do. You are his son, and you can't completely deny your father's family business. So first of all, as Buddhists, we should understand how the Buddha came to be and strive to follow in his footsteps. This is extremely important. It's the same when we practice or in retreat. You should also reflect deeply. As a Buddhist, before you didn't know what to learn. Whether from non-Buddhist teachings or anything else, it didn't really matter. But ever since you took refuge in Buddhism, before he attained enlightenment, he gave away head, eyes, brain to beings. How did he make it through? If you never think about this, then perhaps as a Buddhist, for example, you might say you may not actually be a truly genuine Buddhist. First, let's talk about giving away one's family and possessions. For example, when he was the Prince Mahasattva, he gave away his children and his kingdom. He gave generously and without any reluctance, offering up his cherished wealth, family members, and so on. When the Buddha was still on his causal ground, including in texts like the extensive biography of Shakyamuni Buddha, the White Lotus treatises, as well as Sutra on the collection of the 6 perfections, there are indeed many stories about these kinds of deeds. This also includes Ashwagosha's Buddha Karita in praise of Buddha's acts, which contains such accounts. When Shakyamuni Buddha had not yet attained enlightenment, when he was still on the causal ground, he had long ago finally become the Prince Mahasattva. Some accounts refer to him as the prince who liberates all. At that time, in fact, he gave away his own children and the governance of the kingdom as acts of generosity. He gave everything away. At that time, this prince's story was quite similar to that of Prince Yi Cheng. As I recall, when he was a prince, he wished to give away everything, both sentient and insentient. For example, as for insentient things, gold, silver, and wish-fulfilling jewels in the treasury, he gave all of these away. As for sentient beings, such as his children, his wife, the retinues around him, and animals such as elephants and so on, he gave all these living things, each unique and remarkable in his own way. At that time, he made this great vow. He felt that if a king only possessed great wealth but did not practice generosity, then for many impoverished sentient beings, there would be little benefit. So at that time, he began to declare that all wealth would indeed be offered up. At first, the king also agreed. Then, during the act of giving, in the process, some people from enemy nations knew the prince had elephants as precious as wish-fulfilling jewels, and whoever possessed such an elephant, their country's governance grows stronger. So people from the enemy nation deliberately disguised themselves as others and came to the prince to ask this elephant. The prince gave it to them without hesitation. After he gave it away, many ministers were very displeased. Then they told the king, if this prince is not killed, now that the elephant has already been given to the enemy nation, all the other wealth will be given away too. If this continues, our entire country might be finished. Later, the king also had no choice, but he did not kill him. He simply took his son and daughter. The prince and his princess all left the country. He simply made them leave the kingdom. Then, while they were on the road, there was a man walking who needs servants. His very dear children were taken away by others, leaving him devastated. Later, his wife, his beloved wife, was also taken away. And so he slowly gave everything he owned away, one by one, without any hesitation. So this whole process of giving his family, of course, as you might expect, there were many other events that followed as well. But the principle here, everyone can reflect. Each of us, what we are most attached to is probably wealth, our own children and spouse. All of these, when the Buddha was on the causal ground, he gave away one by one for the sake of attaining enlightenment. Now, in our world, we may be extremely attached to our family, to our children, as well as our status and power. As a prince, if he had continued to enjoy life in the palace, there would have been no issue inheriting the throne. So we can also reflect on this. We may not be able to do it. Generously giving away all of the family, all the wealth and status. But at the very least, as disciples in the Buddha's lineage, we can aspire one day in the future, when we cut off self-attachment, we can be like the prince. We are able to give truly generously and openly without any hint of stinginess or worry, and directly offer all of our own most cherished possessions. Among these cherished things, some are sentient beings, some are not. Whatever we are especially attached to, we can give them away to beings. Right now, when we make offerings, for example, when some people do charity work, if I originally have 1 million, I might just go ahead and give 10 RMB. When we keep practicing generosity, it's often like this too. Whether it's our family members or our own most beloved possessions, if they suffer any damage, no matter who the person is, we might even harm or kill them and not even feel like it's a problem at all. It's common. So especially in today's world now more than ever, everything is based on interests. I think parents are a bit better in this regard. If it's a son or daughter, even if they make a mistake, parents might still forgive them. But when it comes to other relatives, If their own interests are harmed, they won't show any mercy either. This is more true for couples. If something is not in their favor, then harming, killing, or even exploiting the other is seen okay. And as for others, including, as we know, the current relationships between teacher and student, or between ruler and subordinates, many of these are also based on interests. So given such interests, if one truly has an altruistic mind, then even if, like in the case of the Brahmin at that time, who specifically came to ask for his elephant and his wife, at that moment, the prince felt no regret at all, nor did he arise hatred. He made offerings in this way. So when we take a moment to thoughtfully reflect on the meaning and message of this verse, considering its significance, in fact, all Buddhists who enter the Mahayana path, at a certain point, will be able to give away even the things they cherish most, offering them to sentient beings, making offerings to all beings. If it can benefit sentient beings, there is truly nothing that they would ever withhold. To help others, they share freely their body, possessions, and virtues of all times. This is said in the Bodhikaravatara. Body, possessions, and even one's own roots of virtue, without stinginess, all are given away to others. This is the general meaning of the first section. I won't elaborate on some of the stories here. But if you actually look them up, they're explained in detail in the sutras and treatises. Now, the second type earlier, we divided generosity into 4 types. The second type is specifically about the act of giving or offering one's own body. Just as he nourished the tigress with his own flesh when he was Prince Mahamaithribala, so you too should joyfully give your dearly cherished heap of an illusory body to the mob of flesh-eating demons. What this means is, in essence, that when the Buddha was at his causal ground, he actually became Prince Mahamaithribala at that time. Naturally, his name exhibits slight variation across different scriptural translations sometimes. And this is the most commonly used form. When he was the Prince Mahamaithribala, he saw that the tigress was extremely hungry and compassionately offered all of his own flesh to this extremely starving tigress, without any doubt. This story should be familiar to every one of you, and it can be found in the Sutra of the Wise and the Foolish and the collection of the 6 perfections, as well as in the Vinaya Sutra. I remember that the great chariot king had 3 princes, and these 3 princes went to play in a beautiful mountain valley one day. At that particular moment, these 3 princes saw a majestic tigress who was the parent of 7 adorable cubs, each one a playful and energetic little tiger, making a lively family of 7 young tigers in total. Actually, they did not eat any food in total for 7 days. They were all extremely hungry, especially the tigress, though the tiger cubs were perhaps a bit better off since they were still nursing. But as for the mother tigress, she may have offered some of her flesh and blood to the cubs. So she herself was already on the verge of starvation, and the mother tigress was about to starve to death. At that time, the other 2 princes just looked at the tigress and felt just a bit of compassion for the tigress, but didn't really take it to heart. Prince Mahamaithribala was the youngest prince, and he felt an especially strong sense of compassion. He didn't dare to make an offering in front of the other 2 princes because he was afraid that they might object to him doing it. So at first, he used tactful words to say, "You 2 may go back first." And I'll come down once I finish just a few things here. After they left, he began to take off his own clothes. He went into the forest and took off his clothes and prepared to offer his own body as a sacrifice to the emaciated and starving tigress. But at that time, the tigress was so hungry, and she didn't even have the strength to eat his flesh. So at this time, the prince decided to throw himself off the cliff. Some versions of the story may differ a bit, and from my perspective, you can see how other different classical sutras describe this story for reference. When his body was bruised and battered all over, There was some blood for the tigress to lick. After that, the tigress gradually recovered her strength, and she slowly began to eat his flesh. In the end, only the prince's bones and marrow remained. This is how he made his humble offering, with nothing left eventually. After his offering, his mother had a nightmare, and some bad signs have emerged. When the other two brothers went back to the place where they had left him and found that the offering was completed, then the Namo Buddha stupa was built and now exists in Nepal. There are different perspectives according to some historians and some travel accounts as well. Some scholars believe it was built in Nepal, while others claim it is in central India. The sacrifice place has been viewed differently by historians and masters throughout history, but now at least Nepal officially recognizes this as the place where the tiger was fed. Moreover, in my A Dreamy pilgrimage with my guru, I also recorded some information of the supta historically in Nepal, and their travel guides also mentioned the three great stupas of Nepal. One is the Buddhanath Stupa, located in Kathmandu. Second one is Swayambhunath Stupa. And the third is the Namo Buddha Stupa. As a Buddhist, it is absolutely essential to consider these three stupas as pilgrimage sites. When Khenpo Sodargye visited there over the past 3 decades, while His Holiness shared this story, he cried for a long time. I also had some feelings at that time. Sometimes we may just follow our feelings without any judgment. Just as Gendun Champo once said, sometimes when he entered the temples of non-Buddhists, he would also pray sincerely and sometimes shed tears directly. So he said the hearts of ordinary people are not reliable at all. He mentioned that depending on different places, there are always some responses and feelings. Just as he said, our feelings are all have sorts of uncertainties. But His Holiness and past great masters are not like ordinary people. Indeed, this is where our teacher, Shakyamuni Buddha, once truly offered his own body as a gift. This is the real place where it truly happened, and not just a simple myth. So we may think that when Shakyamuni Buddha once at his causal ground, and when he saw an animal suffering from hunger, he offered his precious body to the animal. He was a prince, not a beggar actually, who doesn't have enough food to eat or clothes to wear, living in constant hardship and deprivation. If he was, perhaps it wouldn't matter so much. But as a prince with such a strong altruistic mind, when he saw a tigress like that, he even offered his own body to her. So in this life of ours, with our own illusory bodies, what do we have to cling to? We should joyfully offer them up to any being who wishes to eat flesh or drink blood. We can make such offers. Of course, as it is also mentioned in the way of the Bodhisattva, while compassionate vows stay unclear, this body should not be offered here. Which means before we have purified our vows in compassion, and before we reach the first bhumi of a bodhisattva, we should not offer our own bodies. Otherwise, we may feel regret as ordinary people, and it is very easy to fall away from the Mahayana path of practice eventually. So we should train ourselves with things like vegetables first, by offering vegetables and clothing to begin with. First, we offer what we don't want. After that, we start to join charity work gradually, and then we can become volunteers for others. Our minds get trained this way gradually. When we finally attain enlightenment, we will treat our own bodies as illusory and dreamlike, no attachment at all. Then we can offer our bodies. Otherwise, if we make offerings like burning our fingers to the Buddha, without especially deep meditative concentration, it is also very difficult. Someone faces Mipham Rinpoche and wants to burn his finger for Buddha, and Rinpoche said, "You've successfully gained first bhumi wisdom, or you must have extremely deep meditative concentration. If you lack these, it is easy to regret after the finger burning offerings to the Buddha." In many of our Buddhist temples now, the practice of burning precept scars on the head is a traditional ritual observed by some Buddhist monks. Even though it looks quite crucial, but inwardly there is actually a deep sense of joy for them. When I see some different kinds of videos about the precept scars, and it's definitely so painful at that moment. having such big scars on your head. Actually, I've had this burned on me before when I was sick. In Tibetan Buddhism, often uses moxibustion and just burn it directly. It is so painful. Even a very tiny spot is incredibly painful. So if we burn something like that on our heads, it's extremely painful. But I suppose this is also a very powerful kind of determination. For us, regardless of what history says about this, if you have this kind of courage, I still think it's truly remarkable, even though modern people, some praise it and some don't. No matter what, when I look at these monastics, whether they burn their fingers for Buddha or use this kind of method on their bodies, their being monastics is not for appearances or for some other reason. Otherwise, if they were attached to their own bodies, it would be impossible. So for us, maybe we should take it step by step. We might not be able to offer up our bodies yet. But it is great to just simply having this kind of aspiration. So during our cultivation, on the one hand, as we have often observed, as mentioned in the 400 stanzas on the middle way, even though the body is like an enemy, for the sake of practice, we still need to protect this body. But at the same time, we shouldn't become overly attached to it. If we fall ill, or if someone perhaps insults us or harms us, at times, in fact, it is also good for the Buddha to practice such asceticism in his previous life. If we compare ourselves to that kind of patience, what we go through is really nothing, even if others harm us. If I am truly a Mahayana Buddhist, perhaps it doesn't count as being harmed. This kind of harm should be viewed from, of course, we don't dare to compare ourselves completely to the Buddha, but if we can gradually develop even just a little bit of this kind of mindset, then even simply giving away our bodies wouldn't be considered a big deal at all. There are limits to this giving. Only when the time is right can such acts of generosity be performed. This is the second aspect. The third aspect is the act of giving or donating one's own blood, that is, offering the precious blood from one's own body to help others.
Gerbo shamber tos kirba na onojin ranga chak subar tar pjapar kaver nyang chak chumon de chang tong tagla zewe jimber sha.
Just as he nourished the harmful demons with his own blood when he was King Maitrabala, so you too should lovingly give warm blood from your heart, which is so difficult to cut to the blood-drinking demons. Here it says that our master, Shakyamuni Buddha, even during his causal ground, actually began to offer his own blood to sentient beings. Some offerings were goods, some were flesh, and some were blood. In these examples, each verse presents a different perspective. The story of King Shibi is also found in the Sutra of Wise and Foolish and in the Garland of Birth stories as well. These stories are all recorded there. When Shakyamuni Buddha at his causal ground, what was it like when he was King Maitrabala? In fact, during King Maitrabala's time, he also offered the blood from his own body and gave it as an offering to these yakshas. How to give alms. In this country, specifically at that time, he especially practiced the 10 virtuous deeds. This was King Maitrabala, not the prince. He had everyone in his entire kingdom from top to bottom cultivate great loving kindness and compassion. At the same time, they diligently practiced the 10 virtuous deeds, because when people practice the 10 virtuous deeds, all the 8 classes of heavenly dragons protect these people. With such protection for these people, yakshas, who normally harm sentient beings, but the yakshas no longer had any opportunities any longer, because all the humans were being protected by the gods. When the gods are protecting them, the yakshas really want to. What do yakshas specifically drink? In particular, the blood of sentient beings. If they can't get it, there's nothing they can do. Just like how among animals today, some are quite pitiful. For example, wolves and leopards. If they don't eat other animals, they simply can't survive. They would starve to death. Actually, sometimes for example, when I see a lion and a deer in the wild, when they're fighting, I often take the deer's side and think, oh no, someone should fight off this lion. Someone fight this wolf. Why do they have to eat them? Think other way around. The wolf is quite pity, and so is the lion, because they can only eat this kind of food, and if they don't have it, they'll starve to death. So their karma is also indeed truly and quite particularly especially pitiable. For example, a deer or perhaps some other animals, it might feel terrible when it's being eaten, but in its whole life it never committed such evil deeds. But as for the wolf, from a young age. It has eaten other living beings every day. And if it doesn't, it can't survive. Same as yakshas. At that time, the 5 yakshas really couldn't find any human blood or energy and were about to starve to death with no other choice. In the end, after much consideration, they finally decided to go and find King Maitrabala. And then they said, because you practice the 10 virtues, all the gods and celestial beings protect all living creatures. As yakshas, we simply can't find any fresh blood to eat now, so we're about to starve to death. What should we do? At that time, the king was also especially compassionate. Not only he has compassion for others, even for such fierce, powerful, ancient and legendary beings as yakshas, he also felt compassion for them. He said, you are indeed very pitiful like this. There's nothing else I can do, and I can't let you kill other sentient beings either, so you can drink my blood. Then the king himself, in person, 5 wounds on his body, and let the yakshas drink from them. After the yakshas drank, they were miraculously revived once again and returned to life. At that time, King Maitrabala must have passed away. At that moment, he dedicated the merit. Just like how we often dedicate merit after teaching the Dharma now, Sonam de Tanjareben. As for this verse, it was the dedication made by the Buddha in his previous life. He also said, now I offer you my own fresh blood. Start offering you when I finally attain Buddhahood. I will offer you the sweet nectar of my Dharma. Later, these 5 yakshas became the 5 bhikshus. When Shakyamuni Buddha turned the wheel of Dharma for the first time, they all became the first group of dependents. Sometimes, although yakshas may appear very fierce at the time, but for great bodhisattvas, even if someone forms a negative connection with them, in the end, after all, samsara has its limits. So from this, of course, just as we discussed earlier, each of us truly may not necessarily be like King Maitrabala, offering all the blood from our own bodies to sentient beings, sacrificing our lives so others may live. Not necessarily. But at the very least, nowadays we often do charity work, donate blood in hospitals, or perhaps among our dear close friends and family members. If their blood type matches, we can give them some of our blood. Some people don't even have enough of their own blood and even need transfusions themselves. So in that case, it's not possible. But if, especially for those with high blood pressure, like me, who have to take medicine every single day to control it, taking it in the morning and at night, if there are sentient beings who need blood, it's also a very good thing. In some hospital blood banks, there is good blood without disease. After the doctor runs tests, if they think your blood can be used, on certain occasions, this can also, in certain situations, be considered a kind of action, I suppose. I often go to the hospital myself, and when they draw blood, they take 10 or more vials. While this isn't giving blood, I think that when blood is drawn from my body, there may be many non-human beings, hungry ghosts who feed on essence and blood. These too, right? So every time I think of the Buddha's deeds, the doctor said around 6 a.m, when the confused nurse drew blood, I pray. After the blood is drawn, I ask how much was taken. Sonam de yi tanjia reba nai. Nurse is unsure and wonders if there's something wrong with this person or what's going on. I mumble a few words, but actually, even if it's just like this, whether it's some blood from our own body or even just a little bit in this regard, it's still okay after all. We should also think, if even our own warm, fresh blood can be given to sentient beings, there are many beings in this world who feed on blood, including each of us. Sometimes we might undergo surgery or an operation. At such important times, we must, without fail, make our offerings properly and with due care, either recite a ritual for offering or think, even though this time it's not my body is being cut open and this blood is being given to others. But no matter what, if the blood from my body comes out, there may be many non-human beings who are fond of blood. May all these sentient beings come here. Today, I use my body to offer having surgery. On the other hand, you all come and I offer my body to you. In this way, my surgery, my operation, all of these are for those related beings, those to whom I owe karmic debts, or those who have harmed me. May sentient beings be satisfied. Look at my body now. covered in blood, you all should be happy, right? And if you want to receive it, then receive it. Especially hungry ghosts and yakshas, some sentient beings have always subsisted on such things. If we dedicate the merit to them, if we give them permission, they can easily obtain it. If we don't give permission, actually, the power of hungry ghost beings is extremely weak. They don't have the right, and they don't dare to partake. It's like some of us who are also very afraid. If someone gives it to us, then we have the right of ownership ourselves. So we are right now in the we can also start from small things in our daily lives. In this regard, we can also, in fact, think this way for practicing Dharma, giving, sharing the Buddha's teachings generously with others, including the subtle Dharma, meaning sharing.
총훈 키금 베퍼 게르와 나 대학생 산주 냐르는 장와 따라 추지 폼버 끼오 탐실라 담배 추지 림박 동으로샤.
Just as he saved the fish by reciting the name of the Tathayotgata when he was the chief merchant's son, Yalavityožna, so you too should give the gift of the holy Dharma to all beings who lack it. This refers to when the Buddha at his causal ground became son of chief merchant. In some scriptures, he is called the elder son, while here it is said he was the son of a merchant leader. At that time, he saw these pitiful sentient beings who had become fish, and he recited the name of jeweled top-knot Buddha to save them. This story appears in the Sutra of Great Liberation, the Golden Light Sutra, and other such scriptures. Everyone should remember this very clearly. This is also a story from the distant past. Tathagata of Jewel Victory, or when Jewel Top-Knot Buddha appeared in the world, the entire land experienced a drought, and there were about 10,000 fish trapped in a large pond, simply exposed to the sunlight, they almost dying. At that time, the chief merchant's son, Jalavishana, was rushed, so he used oxen and horses to carry things, and he kept carrying water down from the mountain, trying all sorts of ways to save these fish. But because of their karma, there was really nothing that could be done. Later, the eldest chief merchant's son, Jalavichana, could only among these fish begin to recite the name of Jewel Top-Knot Buddha. It was something like 3 times or maybe a few more. So afterwards, these fish, although they were not saved at the time and all died, after death, they were all reborn in the 33 heavens. That's why we've mentioned before, when we see some sentient beings about to be killed, it may be quite difficult for us to save them directly, but what we can do for them is to recite the name of Jewel Top-Knot Buddha in this way. These sentient beings receive the blessing of the Dharma. Then in their next life, it is believed that they will temporarily be reborn in a favorable realm. Gradually, they will no longer be tainted by afflictions and will eventually attain liberation. Therefore, practicing Dharma giving is also extremely important. So just now when we talked about offering, as we mentioned earlier, we divided it into 4 aspects. These 4 are explained using 4 verses. With this, the teaching on the peacock destroying poison, training the mind, comes to this point.
Bandara Bandara